Hello, everybody. Welcome to Optimize Your Now podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Dr. Anna Cabeca, best-selling author, triple board certified and fellow of gynecology and obstetrics, integrative medicine, anti-aging, regenerative medicine, all of those good things. And she is the founder of Girlfriend Doctor Products, very well known for products that we carry here. Mighty Maca Plus, Keto Greens, Jova, right? Progesterone cream as well. And yeah, she's going to be sharing with us so many amazing things, not even just covering supplementation.
Yeah, and we had such a beautiful conversation with her about connection and desire and all of those things that really connect us with our sexuality, our hormone health, our well-being in general, and, trauma, a little bit of how trauma affects our sexual health and our health in general. So we hope you enjoy this conversation that we had with Dr. Anna. Listen in and let us know if we can answer any of your questions after you've listened to this beautiful podcast with Dr. Anna. Enjoy.
Aloha. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Anna.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to start with, to be honest, one of our best-selling products is the Mighty Maca.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we cannot keep it on the shelf. Our kids love it.
Yeah, well, actually, you were the one that started it first.
Yeah.
And, we were both listening to your podcast with Dave first, to be honest. And then, what literally happens with us all the time, we'll hear it on Dave's, but then we'll start venturing out. So we kind of follow, who these experts are, and you being the hormone expert, literally everything that you say makes sense in my head, and in our head. And a lot of it connects to a lot of the clientele that we currently have and we continue to help out with within menopause.
Yeah.
Right? And even just women in general that are just struggling, even as young as in their 30s, even 20s.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. And what really got me was your story.
Yeah.
Your personal health journey and how you created all these things. So if you don't mind, just diving into that about your journey for a lot. I know you've said it so many times, but for a lot of our listeners that don't know, that's a very profound story.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I don't mind at all. So I'll share that I was post-traumatically diagnosed with early menopause, or infertility first at age 39. And I went through 6 rounds of infertility treatments and didn't conceive. And then I was diagnosed early menopause and was told I wouldn't be able to conceive another child. And, for me at that time, my husband and my kids at that time, it was grief upon grief. And travel has always been a meditation. I have family around the world, but in the Middle East. And so we just started this journey around the world. And I always say I went around the world to learn the Buddha saying that everywhere you go, there you are. So as a result of that, learning really with the hand of God in my life, just the knowledge of, the foods of Mother Earth, the medicinal medicines, the traditional medicines that have been used, herbs and flowers and extracts and different things all around the world. I started, I went to Peru, and in Peru, they said, if you're tired, drink maca. This is in 2006. If you're, infertile, drink maca. And then they would elbow my husband at the time and say, hey, it's the Peruvian Viagra. So you're like, we're going to drink some maca, right? We're going to try this. And I, as a scientist, I was a scientist before I went into medicine, but as a scientist and a physician, I was like, okay, what makes this good? What makes this work this way? And maca, Peruvian maca, not to be confused with Chinese maca, different product, but Peruvian maca has special proteins called macaines and is rich in arginine, which increases nitric oxide, which increases blood flow, which is how Viagra works. And so as I started realizing this and just digging into, with no hope, I was menopause. I'm a physician. I was 39, menopause, infertile. I wasn't looking at ways to reverse my diagnosis. I was just healing, walking. This is a sabbatical healing journey. But all these different plant foods, and as we ran around the world, I homeschooled the girls during this time. it was I mean, it was just like the different foods, the acerola cherries in Brazil, the mangosteen, the turmeric in Indonesia, and the different greens, learning about the spirulina and different things along the way. And as a result of that journey, and I will say the grace of God, reversed early menopause, and then naturally conceived at age 41, my daughter Ava, the child I was told I would never be able to have. So that led me to come home back into clinical practice after a year away. And like, I was on fire to tell my patients, look, we get to the root issues. There's so much we can do. There's so much, there was so much medicine not in my doctor's bag that is in nature, and practices, the other principles and practices along the way. And your diagnosis isn't your destiny. So let's reverse that. Let's remove that. Well,
You were the first person I learned that not all maca is made the same.
Right.
And it was when you started talking about it. But not all maca is the same. It's having different types of mechanisms like how Mighty Maca has to detoxify. Right? I think in our culture, there's a mindset of putting in more or, continue to put in, and we're not really thinking about taking out. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I love that part of the Mighty Maca.
The detoxification pathways and how you tap into it in this most efficient manner was kind of mind-blowing for me. And I mean, okay, so full disclosure too. In the beginning, I was like, oh, I don't know if I should take this. This says girlfriend doctor,
Yeah.
And so you probably hear this all the time as
is this just for women? Right.
Right. And,
I have male world-class Olympic athletes on it for sure.
Right. And I remember hearing that across different platforms, but it wasn't until I started experiencing it, and taking it where we noticed, like, not just the maca, but even the Keto Green, right? Mm-hmm. And we're always looking for efficient ways, not just to get more ketones, but also the greens, obviously. And that was just a brilliant supplement. And again, if I tap back into the nerdy part of me, I did a test retest, hormone, it's kind of like, free testosterone kind of stuff. And, estradiol.
I want to hear it.
And no, it was night and day. Like, not that I'm ever low, but I was on the normal end, but not where I would like it on the normal end. And then when I took it, the most recent one, it was at the not higher end, but like this most balanced, normal, form. And I was like, oh, this is great, and I really haven't changed much with, my workout routine. And so that was the only thing that really was the biggest difference, was taking this supplement. And, like I said, I like to experiment to make sure that, what I'm saying is truth to myself, so that way I can relate to others on, hey, as a male, a lot of us as men are looking for things to really push the needle on how we age, what our resilience looks like, and especially sexual health. It's a topic that a lot of men are not, comfortable talking with as much as women are, right?
Yeah, I think so too. And one thing with the Mighty Maca, we did a study taking 2 to 3 scoops of Mighty Maca per day for 2 months in a group of client men included, and we saw with the men a 70 to 200% increase in DHEA, sulfate in the blood.
That's what I noticed that as well.
We just see that improvement, and we've seen increases in day 21 progesterone for women. So hence it really is a revital. I'd say that's God's healing journey in a can. That's it. So that's everything. Every ingredient there was divinely inspired and some research based, but it was, tried and tested. And, I was just like mixing all these ingredients when I got back from my trip, and I'm like, okay, I need to be more efficient. And so that's how it started, and put it together in this formula. And yeah, no, I'm so glad to hear that result. And I love that you're a tester, right? Because there's so much, and especially as physicians, in practice or working with clients, we want to make sure what we're using works, right? And so we're, again, N of 1, our own best test subjects.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And, with my female clients, especially with PCOS, that's such a common thing, right? But the thing with PCOS, it's the mood, being able to regulate their mood. And
Yes.
so, getting them, first, just, something simple, just the Mighty Maca, and then introducing them into like the Keto Green. It makes a big difference, but is there, I mean, I'm not a physician, but is there a more refined protocol for, PCOS once they find out, especially if they want to not do the traditional Western
Yeah.
route.
And this is, I was in India over the summer and I actually spoke on PCOS because indigenous, and I'm half Arab, half Portuguese, and so half Palestinian, half Portuguese. So like the indigenous roots were more predisposed to PCOS. So that was part of my story without a label. That was part of my story was PCOS, and certainly I passed those genes on to my girls. So which age 17 to 35 now. So let me tell you, I gave these ingredients, these products are family essentials to get rid of PMS and to balance hormones in the household. Tell you, with 4 daughters at home, that was something that
bless
I
you.
knew. Balance your hormones. Here's your Mighty Maca. Let's make a Keto Green smoothie. We've got you covered. This is what we're having. So it's essential. Like, it works. It was tried and tested. But with PCOS, it's also that because we're designed, then this is the thing I have about PCOS. Those with genetics of PCOS, I'm telling you, that is the warrior genetics. That is the Amazonian genetics. That is the, if you want to be cult, you have Pocahontas, and like different Mulan. I mean, whatever nationality, whatever you tap into, the Amazon princess warrior genetics. What is it in Hawaiian? Who's like a Hawaiian princess warrior?
I would say the queen.
Yeah, would be our Ali.
Kalani.
Yeah.
Yeah, Princess Kaiulani, Kapiolani. Yeah, the queens for sure.
So that concept of designed to lead, designed to build muscle, strong, brave, bold, that is the genetics that, that PCOS. However, you give a teenager that diagnosis, or a young woman, they're like, oh, I have fat genes and acne genes and infertility genes.
Yes.
No, sister. You have warrior genetics. You are powerful. You can build muscle. You can multitask. You can lead. I'm so grateful for you. So we have to incorporate those behaviors. Getting out in nature. Working with our athletics, building muscle or endurance, depending, getting that nutrition, fasting, Keto Green. And so like that's built into, the easiest thing is to follow my protocol in Keto Green 16. Because I've made those recipes as simple as possible. All of them are medicinal recipes with 16-hour intermittent fasting. And add in the Mighty Maca, add in the Keto Green shake supplement. You can do those things. Get that sunshine. You got to get that vitamin D up because you need extra vitamin D to sunlight exposure, get a lot more than vitamin D from the sun, but a lot of good outdoor nature exposure. And supplement with vitamin D, that is very powerful for our genetics. And you see a tremendous improvement in as little as, by the time their next period comes.
Wow.
I love that.
Yeah. Right.
I love that.
I mean,
it's
switching
like,
that
switching
whole
your
mentality,
mindset.
right?
Even like, around PCOS, around menopause,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Switching around the mindset and really, and taking the responsibility, right? Back, taking your control back, that there is something you can do and that it's really just, directing the energy differently.
Yeah.
Right. But it does start with the mindset.
Oh, it's the mindset for sure.
Absolutely.
Right.
You switch that mindset. And I had, I was doing an interview for a journalist had reached out to me to talk about PCOS. And when I told her that, she started crying. And this is the, adult woman journalist. She was, I've always thought that I build too much muscle. I have too much, these issues. And so that perspective when she just started, it was such a relief and a blessing. And it's the truth. It's not like I'm not like it is. You can see it, right? You see it. And when you see that transformation in that individual, Wow.
Thank you so much for sharing that piece. That was very
I
powerful.
can tell, yeah, it's very impactful for, especially for a lot of our female listeners that do struggle a lot with that, you know. I mean, image, especially, you know, when they look at themselves in the mirror, you know, and they take on, you know, such a different mentality as we were mentioning, right?
Well, and the fertility issue,
Yeah, that's a big one.
right? I feel like that can really mess a lot of our females up when, you know, there's this belief like that's the one thing we're supposed to be able to do and blah, 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 right? But
Right.
it's very complex,
It's very complex.
especially in the world that we're living in today. And I feel like that education is not being passed down. It's not fully understood. So how could it be?
Yeah. And I think, like, through my experience, and I write about, you know, in my book, The Hormone Fix, for me, foundational reading for my patients. I want every woman to have that information. And then following the plans in Keto Green 16, what you see is an increase in fertility. I mean, there's no, like, we have so many, we call them Mighty Maca babies or Keto Green babies or whatever you want. But it's like, look, we're, you know, what my intention is to create the healthiest body possible, to reduce inflammation. Like you said, I mean, the formula within Mighty Maca affects over 30 anti-inflammatory pathways, you know, interleukin pathways, NK pathways, so cytokine pathways, so all these different pathways. So it had, but the key, I think, is the adaptogenic complex. And nature is complex, and but so with that, creating insulin sensitivity improves fertility. So we can drive that down. And an important piece that is so underlooked in our medical systems is the alkalinity piece. Is that, I mean, I like urine pH. Let's just focus on that one biomarker. I can tell you from working with thousands of women that when they get that alkaline urine pH and they get in ketosis at the same time, it is a celebration. It is, it is a whole nother energy. And if you think of it from a quantum physics or energetic perspective, the vibration of ketones so much stronger. The vibration within alkaline is so much stronger. Alkalinity is anabolic, acidity is catabolic. And so where does life grow in an anabolic environment? It needs to be anabolic. You need that alkalinity. And as an obstetrician, we know that amniotic fluid is like 8.5 pH. It's very alkaline pH. So Mother Nature is usually right.
When somebody is going through fertility, say they decide to go through, fertility treatments, should they continue with the same, like 1 to 2 scoops a day and then their Keto Green, or is there more detoxification that they need to be aware of?
Yeah. So if you start, like I would say, if you start on, Mighty Maca and the supplements and the program ahead of time, stay on it to the best of your ability. Stay on. We've had clients stay on Mighty Maca through multiple pregnancies and postpartum, feel really safe about the formulation now. Especially, initially I was concerned. I'm like, okay, if you're pregnant, do we want to be adding detoxifiers? But the combination of ingredients are all very, very safe, and it helps support that healthy pregnancy and postpartum period. And because it's adaptogenic, it really does help with pregnancy. So we found, again, work with your doctor about this, check and make sure that it's okay. But in my experience and clients' experience with it, it is very, very effective. It is very effective. Now, if you have someone, even in the case like of high toxic burden, you want to go slow, right? So start with like a half a scoop or a quarter of a scoop, and gradually work up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And my granddaughter, she's 3. She's been drinking it since she was 1. So the ingredients for me, because this is a family, they are the cleanest ingredients that I can source. So.
No, and you are right. I remember I don't remember where I heard you say it, but the taste tests were the kids. Children.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
And I mean, honestly, like.
That's our kids.
Yeah, that's our kids too.
And I mean, if we run out, all hell breaks loose in the house. Like, Where's my
I'm
mighty
telling you, if I
maca?
don't get my Mighty Maca shot first thing in the morning, it breaks out in my house too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they can definitely tell when they are taking it and when they're not, and they're so
Mhm.
intuitive. Our kids are so
Yeah.
intuitive, so
How old are your children?
8 and
yeah.
12.
8 and 12. My youngest is now 17. And she, like last year, she said to me, Mom, I'm the only one of my friends that doesn't have problems with her periods. And I'm like, I can tell when a little something. That's when I'm giving you that extra Mighty Maca. That's when you get your afternoon dose. Or make sure. And she doesn't have any. Like, okay, I'm like sneaking it in there, but like no problem. She's like, I have no problem. Like,
That's good to
yeah,
hear.
It is. It is. Well, and
yeah.
it's sad to hear that there's a lot of young women struggling,
There's a
you
lot of
know.
young women struggling. And the
Yeah.
problem is, I saw another 17-year-old girl a month ago, and she was on 5 prescription medications. She was
Oh
on
my
birth control pills,
God.
not sexually active, but for an ovarian cyst post second COVID vaccine. And
Oh
she was
yikes.
on an anti anxiety medication and on an acid medication and one other so an ADHD medication. So that's like, what are we doing to our children?
And it's not, I mean, I'm 42 now, right? When I was 14, that's what was given to me too.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't sound
Right.
like in that realm we have not come very far, right? I
We
was
have
put
not.
on Accutane while on a birth control. And when I think about that today, that's in my perspective with what I know now, that's crazy. I
Yes.
would never allow that to happen to my children, right? And I wish so much that I had this when I was young. So simple, like you said, food, medicine,
Hmm.
right? Simple,
Start simple.
medicinal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Starting simple, and I think that's another issue too, is that people try to add on things without going back to the basics.
Well,
Taking
not
a
being
look at what
intentional.
their
Yeah.
gut
Just,
is.
yeah.
And,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what I do like too, though, if you don't mind me interjecting on
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this, is how in a lot of your talks and even in a lot of your posts, you talk about something that we agree upon, especially is the connection, between
Yeah.
each other and human beings. And
Yeah.
I know I mentioned oxytocin earlier, but it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Like, connection is healing. Like we always talk about, we coin it as a term called sedative healing, sedative connection, right? So it's healing through this connection through another human being. And since, if you don't mind me saying, like, pandemics, right? You see this huge disconnect between each other as far as human beings go, destroying cultures, right? And so, I feel that, and destroying our ability to heal as human beings, we don't realize how much, these hormones, especially oxytocin, is responsible for that, right?
For our well-being. Yeah.
And cortisol,
Mhm.
that delicate
I
balance.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know so much about it if I hadn't experienced this, I say, cortisol,
Agree.
oxytocin disconnect myself. And so that was post-traumatically, realizing, okay, I don't feel love for my husband anymore. I don't feel
Yeah.
love for my work anymore. Like, I was completely disconnected. What was going on here? Until I figured out, okay, now there's this cortisol oxytocin disconnect here, because oxytocin, so when cortisol goes up, oxytocin goes down. When cortisol's up for a long time, it gets suppressed by the paraventricular nucleus in the brain, and you have low oxytocin and low cortisol. And that's that physiology of disconnect,
Yeah.
physiology of depression, physiology of
Mm-hmm.
burnout, physiology of divorce. I say it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that is stress physiology. So, and as a physician, as a hormone expert, I was like, okay, the most powerful hormone in our body is oxytocin. And I'll tell you guys that when I started, like, at 48, I started gaining weight again without doing anything different. That 20-pound perimenopause, like, I was, PTSD was still under the surface and rearing its ugly head, and depression, mood swings, all that stuff. And the weight gain was the needle that broke the camel's back, or the
Yeah.
straw that broke the camel's back,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I created my Keto Green approach. Then I getting into ketosis, realizing I was getting very acidic, not liking how I was feeling, and I added the alkalinizers. And then the mornings I would get up and, read my spiritual book, read the Bible, journal,
Yep.
meditate.
Yep.
Or walk on the beach. My urine pH was more alkaline each day. So then I was, I studied physiology. So studying the renal physiology, cortisol increases hydrogen ion secretion across the renal tubules. So that creates that more acidic urine pH, where oxytocin does the opposite.
Right.
And
Right.
so and that's you can measure that. So that urine pH is such an important biomarker to me to see how are we interacting with our thoughts, mind, body, nutrition, and environment. It gives us so much feedback. And so this was, that was a big aha moment for me, how oxytocin is. And such an alkalinizing, such the hormone of longevity. And when you start focusing on those oxytocin increasing practices, it's, another word, it's a whole nother level. And that connection is also something. And then I'm curious, in the Hawaiian culture, it seems like either multi-generational families, is there, big community support, like your door's open, your neighbor comes in, stuff like that. Because that's definitely the
Absolutely.
Middle Eastern. That's like my family of origin
Oh, wow.
that I
Yeah. Yeah.
grew
Yeah.
up with. And that traditional societies built, their continuity and existence and the longevity of family lines too. But through that connection of community, the big weddings, the celebrations, the inclusivity, your birthday, your anniversary, your
Yeah.
name day. I mean, there's
Yeah.
let's just
Yeah.
celebrate something every day.
Yes.
Correct. Correct.
Right?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, that very much in the Hawaiian culture,
Oh, for
too.
sure.
And a lot, I feel like just like traditional cultures, a lot of it does revolve around food,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
Yes, for sure. I love food.
Yes, yes. I did want to touch upon what you were saying. We were talking about connection. You were talking about connection. You were talking about that increased cortisol. Some of the things that we are experiencing with trying to help our clients here is for women. How do you connect again after having gone through chemo radiation and your, mastectomy, your double mastectomy, and still being young, young and wanting to have that life back, right? I mean, you're talking about acidity, and I'm just thinking in my head all those things that they went through. I mean, it just messed up everything.
Yep, it did. But the good news is the body has tremendous capacity to rejuvenate and regenerate, right? And we know that. And so all the things that you offer in your practice too, the energy, the biocharger, the, frequencies, the light things we do, light therapy. I think the most empowering thing we can do is getting out in nature more. All the oxytocin increasing behaviors, using meditation, energy. My cancer patients struggle with PTSD. There's a PTSD under the surface. I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to be grateful that I'm alive and they caught it in time. You have trauma. And so so there's that physiology waiting for the next shoe to drop. So a part of the way I approach this with my clients is like, first of all, how do you play? What brings you pleasure? How do you you're going to do oxytocin snacks during the day. I call it oxyplay snacks during the day. And we work together to create a body inhospitable to cancer. What were the risks associated that made whatever part of your body vulnerable to that cancer? And let's heal that energetically, nutritionally, restoratively. We have so much we can do. And then your body is inhospitable to cancer. That is a diagnosis of your past, just like you graduated high school, whatever high school you graduated, graduated college, you're done. Those were things you graduated. Breast cancer, you're done, right? That is a diagnosis of the past. You don't have to wait for the next shoe to drop. You to retrain your nervous system. So PTSD work, like with EMDR, ketamine oxytocin therapy, EFT, emotional freedom technique, different things to get that nervous pathway disconnect, but also it's getting into that state of neutrality. and revitalized health. And the second, that alkalinity, that alkaline urine piece is key. Getting keto green is what I call it, or keto alkaline or keto green. Getting into that state, because ketosis will increase insulin sensitivity. The three things that I see my cancer patients who come into me having had a diagnosis or a history of, they all, they have low vitamin D, they have a high toxic burden, they have some type of stress, trigger, stress trigger. Look at, they so look at what were the risks that brought them to that point. Because when you reduce those risks, when they see those numbers improve, like, hey, I did that. That's very empowering.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And intimacy, sex, they're told like, oh, well, I'm sorry, you can't have, you got, so that's one of the reasons I carry Jolva.
Yes.
And so that's over the counter. And so that Jolva, around the vulvar vestibule, clitoris to anus. I mean, that's the most, I would say, most important real estate of our body. That area, use it there. And that is, that really does improve the experience. I hear that every day.
Yes. I mean, and stress is such a huge part. Yes. And it's safe and it's edible. That's what I tell my clients. Yes.
Everything. Good enough
everything.
to eat.
Yes. And, because stress is such a huge part when it comes to intimacy.
Yeah.
Right?
For both men and women.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
There's we experience our clients, our patients and customers having a lot of pressure. Right? When there's so much demanded of the body, so much demanded of the mind, so much demanded of your time.
Yeah.
And something simple like Jolva, can really help. And we did, recommend it to our customers who are now in remission, right? And just like you said, that PTSD and, just figuring out this new body and and it's been helping.
For sure.
Just to even create some type of stimulation, some type of want and feeling of, wanting and needing.
Desire, like I say, receptivity, because when I teach on what I will be talking at the biohacking conference in Austin at Dave Asprey's event is the secrets to intimacy and connection. And, when it comes to loss of intimacy, it's typically comes down to three things. It's either issues of desire, disconnect, or discomfort. Because if it hurts every time you do something, why would you want to do it? You totally wouldn't do it. So, and that's the case in post-cancer therapies, on birth control pills even, there's dryness issues, and certainly post-menopause, peri and post-menopause. And if it hurts, your body, even without realizing it, is going like, oh, nope, that's not for me. That wasn't really comfortable. I've got to discharge an odor the next day or a urinary tract infection. Right. Hey, I'm not doing that again. And the reality is we can completely reverse that and, support your body naturally, creating a resistance to any of that, but more importantly, creating pleasure, ease, and joy.
Yes. So, yeah. And I just want to confirm. So consistency is key, right? Especially when you're going through those. So applying it on a daily basis is best, right? Because from what I know of it, it's activating stem cells. You're recovering tissue. You're repairing tissue, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But I think the conversation around biome is also, underestimated too, right? Like, such an exciting time now that we're discovering that there's different biomes all over our body, that we have control over, and, simple remedies like this, to me at least, and when I treat majority of my clientele, my patients are women. And little known fact is that, like, I tell this to a lot of my patients is, I dove into women's health when I was in PT school because I had no idea how to take care of women, right? And so I was the only guy in the class, right? And out of coincidence, I was the only one in women's psychology class too. So that was a fun one. I was iced out all the time, but I wanted to learn more about the female anatomy so that I knew, like, if I have a pregnant, patient, like, how am I going to treat them? How am I going to take care of them, right? And so, I've had a privilege of studying under, physical therapists that were open to having me join. And even though I didn't enter the realm of, women's health and pelvic floor therapy, I definitely, learned to appreciate, a lot more of what goes on, with the female anatomy, what women experience and go through. But more importantly, like, even how men can get, are affected, especially in connection with women. Like, it just gave me much more of a broader understanding of, how important, relationships really are, with yourself as well as, your partner. And, the pelvic floor part conversation, if you don't mind me diving into that, was a very interesting experience for me, learning, within that very early budding niche of physical therapy practice. And it was shocking to me to see how, not just how many women were being affected, pelvic floor dysfunction from sitting. And this was a conversation I was like almost 20 years ago, right? 20 some years ago. And the person that I was studying under, she was so ahead of her time. She stated to me, she's like, listen, like, sitting is the new smoking. I was like, what does that mean? And I really started to see it. And it was, the kind of the crossover from, pelvic floor dysfunction is typically only with women, where we're seeing this rise of men having pelvic floor dysfunction as well, right? Just from sitting.
Sitting, exactly.
And, yeah, like, so, I mean, the weight gain, just the inactivation of these, these deeper muscles that
And
are responsible for,
Mhm.
and nerves that are responsible for so much more than just sex. Everybody always relates to sex. It will affect it,
Yeah.
but we don't realize how really it's connected to everything that involves stability in our life, and balance.
Yep.
And as I say that out loud, it kind of carries over, to all of the, the emotional and the, spiritual, if you will.
There's so much, right? Like sacred sexuality. I think it's just, we relook at the energetic aspects and benefits of sacred intimacy and how beautiful that is. And when there's barriers, and again, pelvic floor health is beyond sexual health, bladder health, right? Rectal health, prolapse issues, erectile dysfunction in men. And I see men in my clinic, and I've had two 52-year-old and a 53-year-old this year that have had erectile problems for years. And one with cardiovascular disease, and they're like, oh yeah, they just say when you need to take a Viagra. I'm like, what? What
No.
is this? Like within 3 weeks, literally, he restored his erectile function. One of them, the other one I need follow up with still. So, I mean, within 3 weeks, after being struggling with it for years, like what does that do to your emotion? And then as a gynecologist looking at for female sexual health, the pelvic, and I'm an osteopathic doctor by training. I went to osteopathic medical school. So I was a researcher, physiology, diving medicine, before medical school. And then, OB-GYN by training, but I went to an osteopathic medical school. So I love manipulation, alignment, and the connection, the fascia, right? Because the fascia is connected all throughout our body. It holds us together, and that includes the pelvic floor, and it's so often ignored. But yet there's constant pressure from sitting, and that also affects sacral nerves S2, 3, and 4, which affect the clitoris, the nerves of the clitoris, around the vagina. It's our organs of sexual function. It's organs, those are the nerve supply for bladder control. And it's also the same nerves that you use to spread your toes. So I always have clients, okay, let me see you spread your toes, and I can get a good assessment of how's their sacral nerve 2, 3, and 4 doing. And if they can't, then they're having bladder dysfunction. But it's that neural pathways. It's those neural pathways. So manipulation, flexibility, walking, stretching, yoga, hula. My daughter in Maui is in a hula.
Hello.
Halal, thank you.
Hello. Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, you got to teach me to move that way.
Yes.
I've got the belly dancing, but traditional cultures learn to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of, womb awakening, opening up
Yes.
feminine energy. It's huge, beautiful empowerment. And so like those types of activities are really part of a good prescription plan from my book.
Oh, I love that you brought that in.
Yeah. No, movement is medicine.
Yeah.
For sure. Because a little known fact too is that, hula was actually more performed by men originally.
It was
And it was brought
only
in.
meant for
It was
men.
only meant for men. And
Really?
that was such an
Yeah.
important thing for, it is a very important thing for our culture for sure. But it's more popularly advertised with women, right? Like today, right?
Well, when tourism started,
right?
it was
It's much more
visually appealing.
Yeah, when you see a woman,
Yeah.
a beautiful woman
Yeah.
dancing hula, right?
Yeah.
Very graceful, right? But I think with that, what you mentioned earlier, right, in that femininity and the sexuality part, it's just as important for men as well.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
get grounded and get movement, whether
And in touch with your feminine energy.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's that balance,
Yeah.
that integration, right? That's
Yes.
that part of integrating our masculine and feminine. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
powerful. That's beautiful.
Oh my gosh. We feel like
God, we could go on forever.
we could go on
with you.
forever. There's so many things. I mean, we didn't even touch on the progesterone cream.
Oh my
For
gosh.
sure.
That is essential. And I'm like, I get it now because the FDA is cracking down on those of us that are
Yeah.
doing some of these things, trying to make
Yeah.
beautiful, accessible ingredients for patients. And so that balance cream is foundational, and it's progesterone with pregnenolone. And I find that most of us benefit from both, pregnenolone being a direct precursor to DHEA. And then also I added tripeptide for the cosmetic skin brightening and
Yes.
reducing fine lines and wrinkles. I have to be careful how I say things now. And it can make a big
the truth.
difference.
It does. It does make a big difference, and I love it. And I use it religiously from days 14 to 28,
Nice.
and it helps.
Nice. And totally. And there's like, I've heard some influencers in the medical space say, well, you don't absorb transdermal progesterone. You just don't get transdermal, you don't absorb I'm like, where are they getting that from? You're not going to see it in a blood measurement per se, but you will see it in saliva and urine. So, and you do feel the difference.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and that's what we tell our customers and our clients. That's the best way to test is if you feel it.
I think that's one of the most important things is if people can tune in to what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Your healing journey can be much more empowering. Like a lot of us spend so much time, I don't realize how much we numb ourselves from a number of different things.
Or rely on outside information.
Right? Or that as well.
Not trusting in our own self.
I think hopefully like, the awareness in these types of discussions is to get back to trusting that intuitive self.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And with love, not if we're acting based on fear, it's never the right direction.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I love that. That was a great way.
It's powerful.
That was a great way to sum up our entire conversation.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. So as we mentioned earlier, we talked about sanative connection, right? Sanative connection. And so healing connection. And, we wanted to also, we have a couple questions that we always ask our guests, and one of them revolves around that. When or who, or even what, have you experienced in that arena of sanative connection? What was your healing connection, in other words?
I have to say that my faith is a big part of my healing, and in my faith when I didn't believe that I had faith. And I remember, like, just seriously, I was like, near suicide. I didn't care if I lived or died. This after my son had passed away in an accident, and I was, climbing this mountain, and I was in Australia, part of our journey around the world, and I climbed this this mountain in Kinkin, and it's an early morning hike to watch the sunrise as you scale the top of the mountain. And I slipped and I started falling and was falling over the cliff, and my leg, I grabbed a tree branch instinctively and it held me, and I cut my leg, but I heard very distinctly, I was like, why didn't you let me die? And he says, you will get through this. Like, you will get through this. And it's not, you said this earlier too, you have to go through it, right?
Yeah.
You can't go over it, get over
Yeah.
it. Can't go under it. You have to go through it, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the journey. You will survive this was the message that I got. You will survive this. And I cried because I didn't want to necessarily.
Yeah.
And it was that reminder that I will be used through this experience. I will be able to bless others through the experiences in my life. And I do believe, so many amazing connections I've had in my life, but definitely that moment of divine connection. Said, oh, if I'm going to get through it, I better do it the healthy way.
Wow.
Thank you so much. That was powerful.
Well, and really, Dr. Anna, thank you for deciding to stay. I can't even tell you.
Like the impact that you have on all of us, on the world, I will say. You can tell, you're a topic of conversation through many of the platforms that we look through, and that, the podcasts that we listen to. I mean, the book that you've written, The Hormone Fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, thank you for blessing the world with your gifts and your skills,
And your energy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Presence. The other question that we like to also ask our guests is literally the title of our podcast, and it's called Optimize Your Na'au, right? And so for those listeners that don't know what Na'au is, and part of it does connect with our name of our business here, Na'au Pono Wellness. And Pono means to make right or to correct. Yeah. Even balance out. And so Na'au can literally translate to what's happening on the inside of our body. Our guts can be the literal translation of it. Na'au could also mean an energy, or where our source of life comes from, our connection to our past, to our ancestors. There's a lot of layover or multiple meanings, in other words, to this word. So with that being said, what do you do to optimize your Na'au?
For me, trying to live in the moment of continuous optimization of it, right? Like that's continuously optimizing that internal knowing, that internal intuition, that internal feeling of gratitude, and that comes to being the practice for me is being present in the moment, is working, is trying to just breathe in, I'm here now in this. This is, being present in this moment right now with gratitude, with a sense of gratitude. And also becoming more aware of the intuition, the gifted intuition and the connection to everything around me. And it helps me stay connected. And a practice beyond that has helped me in this is like, think of myself as being in an audience of one. For me, that being God, an audience of one, and acting for that audience of one, not for what other people expect or want or demand of me per se, but what is in alignment with my highest and best self, that serves others and the mission that I have in the world. So
that was beautiful. Again, Dr. Anna, thank you so much for joining us, for your time, for all of your knowledge, and really, like, you are such a resource for so many, for men and women when it comes to hormone health and health in general. And we really appreciate this conversation that we just had. Again, you can check out all the products that we talked about, thegirlfrienddoctor.com. And her Instagram is @thegirlfrienddoctor. You can also check out dranna.com, and I think it'll take you to the same domain. And her podcast is the Girlfriend Doctor Show. So definitely,
That's right.
Something that we enjoy listening to.
And also check out her book, The Hormone Fix.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And if you're going to be in Austin, she's going to be speaking on desire, something that will affect every single one of us.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here with you and your community. Thank you.
Oh. And hopefully maybe we'll see you in July.
I hope so too. I hope so. That's that connection piece, right? That'll be an oxytocin moment guaranteed.
It'll be. It's for sure. Okay, Dr. Anna, thank you for joining us.
Aloha.
Aloha.